decision fatigue. This is something that all of us really deal with, every single human, because, well, all of us have to make decisions every single day, big ones and small ones. And especially as they go ahead and build up, it's just like a muscle. I like to think of decision making much like willpower, much in the same way. Whenever you may or may not have the will to continue to make those big decisions, I need to take a nap or I need to take a break. When you're working a lot, that's going to be the same feeling, same idea. And so decision fatigue, much like muscle fatigue, and of course really just ties into mental fatigue, that brain fog feeling, we got to figure out how do we manage our decision making so that we make not only higher quality decisions, but also from there, the types of decisions that don't leave us drained, right? How do we protect our energy despite all of the decisions that have to be made? And especially if you and I have the same amount of time in every single day, how is it that you, myself, or another person can have wildly different feelings and energies, even if we were to make arguably the same types of decisions? And then from there, the habits that we make behind the decisions that we make and decide upon every single day. So decision fatigue can also be found in the ways of the workforce. And you can see it in the different types of not only models of workforces, but societies. For example, if you look at North Korea, you look at South Korea, North Korea on the communistic bend, and then you have South Korea on the capitalistic bend. And from there, there's a completely different way of life. For example, if you're in a communistic government or communistic country, the idea is that the government is making most of, if not all of the decisions for you. So you shouldn't really have to worry about what work you do or where you go to school or what you get educated or what food you're eating today or tomorrow or the types of clothing that you wear, or everything, really. You don't have to really decide on any of that. And that can, in some people's lives, perhaps be a benefit. And I will go ahead and make a case as to why that wouldn't be. But then you have the other side, for example, like with South Korea, where you do have your own agency. An agency meaning like your own, you are sentient, right? You have your own human agency. You are an independent sovereign being that from there has to make decisions because you are responsible for tomorrow and what tomorrow may bring and how you are situated to tackle tomorrow. Decision fatigue you will see on the most granular levels in your own life, and of course in these macro levels. And so you have to look at it because, of course, it's kind of hard for the average person to change the entire world, but collectively we can. So that means that you yourself must make the types of decisions that allow you to feel fulfilled and empowered, so much so that you can not only fill your cup, but also fill the cups of others. So how are you managing your time? And what do you decide to spend your time, your money, and your energy on? Because this is where then burnout can form. When we are spending time, money, and energy in places that we don't see aligned with the ultimate vision of where we're going. And the likelihood of the vision that we have for ourselves to become what we want our lives and see for ourselves to be comes down to the decisions that we make every single day. So combating and being ready for the impending fatigue from having to make decisions every single day and putting ourselves in the best possible place to make the best possible decisions will be the number one piece to living the quality of life that you want, your decisions. So welcome to today's Gen Ed class. All right, so first I want to go ahead and get us started with this decision fatigue in the specific context of you. with how you are making your decisions. And then because it's a little bit tough, we're going to go ahead and create a second point of comparison. Now, for a second there, if you're just going into like, okay, cool, 2 points of reference, I like it. Here's the reason why I want us to use a second point of reference. Because we as humans, when it comes to making decisions, have a bicameral mind. So what does a bicameral mind mean? Very simply put, just two. And with that, either or opposites, inverses. Meaning, we don't really understand good without also having an idea of what bad can be. Or hot without cold. Light without darkness. You get the idea. It's this dichotomy of this versus that, the yin and the yang. We see it all over in culture. We have God and we have Satan, heaven and hell. Similarly in sales, decisions and making it as easy as possible for not only the salesperson, but the client, the potential customer, to make the decision to say yes. That is going to be the big piece, because also humans choose always the path of least resistance. And not necessarily always, but are generally inclined without proper discipline to take the path of least resistance. And this is because of decision fatigue. When we feel this rub in the things that we have to get done or the decisions that we have to make, because they may feel like a big decision, whether or not they're actually big decisions, it does ultimately come down to how you feel about the decisions that you have to make ultimately. Because the reality is that if you don't make the decisions, well, then someone else is going to have to make the decision for you. This is why there are such things as managers and bosses in businesses. Because if you won't make the decision of what you need to do, then that's why you have a manager. Or more importantly, perhaps the manager in this specific context just happens to have whatever the case scenario, and so it's important that they are the ones managing or delegating to simplify the decision-making process, so that this way, if you are then working with XYZ people on, for example, your team or a team, you, if you're a part of the team, may have a tremendously awesome skill set, but when you get thrown into different places, it's obviously not useful to you nor the team. And then similarly with the individual people, so that instead of bogging everyone down with a ton of decisions, how can we then simplify it? And then from there, when you start to then be a business owner, an entrepreneur, it's not just you making decisions for yourself, but it's making decisions for yourself and everyone else. And this being a big piece to a quality manager, because then it's not only figure out how do I keep myself fully booked with work, but then properly delegate the things to everyone else so that we can most efficiently carve through things with the least amount of fatigue in the process, preserving the decision making. I mean, and you hear the stories all the time. Well, maybe not. And let me go ahead and share one with you. But for example, like Mark Zuckerberg, he's a very wealthy man, but he's not exactly picking a lot of different outfits or getting much into fashion. In fact, he was quoted as saying that he only has a few pieces of clothing, or as far as t-shirts go, and he wears the same t-shirts because it's just one less decision to make. And you'll start to notice this big trend between those that have a lot of wealth and those that don't tend to have as much, because it's a question of how much is your time worth, and the decisions that you're making. Is your time really best spent? The decisions that you're making are the best quality decisions you can be making, the ones about this $10 an hour work, or is it the decisions about the $100 an hour, $1,000 an hour, 10,000, 100,000, $1 million an hour work? And that in and of itself is a decision. So then you can start to see where the slippery slope of fatigue can come from, right? There's a lot of these little micro decisions that start to kind of trail here in the back. But the reality is that we have to find a way to become as efficient as possible with our decision making. So bring it back to the simplest point. We have a bicameral mind. And a bicameral mind yearns most for two choices. Maybe three you can get away with. But if you want to make the decision as easy as possible, one or the other. And then from there, you can start to distill. For example, if you're in sales and you're making a cold call to a prospect to schedule an appointment. Hi, blah, blah, blah. This is blah, blah, blah. Calling you about blah, blah, blah. Da, 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 da. You have a conversation and it seems like they're down to go ahead and schedule an appointment with you. So, hey, I was wondering, does tomorrow at this time or at this time work better for you? And it doesn't even have to be that specific. It can say, hey, does tomorrow or does the day after work better for you? Okay, tomorrow. So then tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon? Tomorrow afternoon. Okay, so tomorrow afternoon like 2 p.m. or tomorrow afternoon like 5 p.m.? Like 5 p.m.? Okay, so just make sure like 5 p.m., like actually specifically 5 p.m. or like 5:15? Okay, like 5:15 because you'll be getting back from work. Cool. Right, we're trying to make the decision making as easy as possible for you, for them. Same thing with your family and friends. I can't even tell you how many times that either with my own friends, family, and they already know this about me, that, hey, if we're going to do something, let's figure it out. When do you want to do this? I love having conversations, but otherwise it's just a conversation. It's just kind of sits there, which is cool. But otherwise, then it just might take up space in my head. And perhaps for you, you may feel the same way. And this is the importance of also, when you're making these decisions, simply write it down. Keep track of it. Don't let it all just sit there in your head, because it's not going to be any use in your head. It's hard to decipher and categorize and catalog and organize all the thoughts all at once, especially if you're trying to make a decision. Because the reality is we are emotional creatures. There's simply no way around being an emotional creature. We can do our best in that being our superpower of logic and abstraction. And with that, being able to conceptualize things that otherwise, they're not objective reality. We can create subjective realities. That's incredible. No other animal can do that. And so in this, we have to be careful, because not only can our emotions run rampant in the logic, but especially when we're trying to make logical decisions, we have to rely on tools that pull forth our logic and lessen the emotion. Because when it comes to decision making, if logic is high, then emotion is low. And if emotion is high, then logic is low. So before you make the decision, make another one, or at least just simply check in with yourself. Is my emotion high? Is my logic high? If so, what needs to change? Or if not, what needs to stay or change? Whatever the case scenario, right? But the idea, we want to make decisions as simple as possible. What's funny is that depending on where you live in the world, this entire subject may not matter at all. Because what decisions do you have to make? If, for example, you live in North Korea, you know exactly when you get food and how you get food and from where you get food and why you get this amount of food and why you get that specific type of food, or insofar as you've been given enough of the reasons to satisfy enough of your desire to know. And in a communistic setting, the idea is that the government will own everything. And so if that be then the case, you don't really have to make a lot of the decisions, because also you have the school system and whatever that system be, and your healthcare and whatever that system be, and your employment and the workforce and the labor market. Well, there wouldn't necessarily be a market, but so whatever that be. And so you basically just have the government as your parents for life. And especially when you're a child and you have your parents, I remember being a kid. I loved it. You had to make way less decisions. I legitimately at one point as a child believed that things just like magically got fixed. And I just realized it's not, they just got magically fixed. It's just, I went into a different room and my mom cleaned it. No, that's all it was. But I didn't have to make a lot of the decisions, because I didn't have to worry about my food, my water, my shelter, my purpose in life, the things I do on a day to day, my vision. Like, I didn't have to worry about any of that. And so that can legitimately create a tremendous fatigue. Heck, you might be listening to this right now and be feeling this same fatigue of the amount of things on your plate that you have to decide upon. And it can feel like a lot at times. So the idea is, take a piece of paper or your phone, go into your notes app, or with a pen and paper, write down all of the things that you feel you have to make a decision on. And I'll simplify it for you. Because if it's longer than 3, heck, if it's longer than 5, you don't actually have that many decisions to be making, because it sounds like your priorities might be thrown out of whack. But if you're sitting there and you're like, no, my priorities are very specific. I just have a lot of decisions to make within these 3 priorities. Okay, cool. If that be the case, let's move with that. If that not be the case, then you need to simplify your priorities down. So when we look at these decisions, let's simplify it down into another 3. What are the things that you can definitely do something about? What are the things that you definitely can't do anything about? And what are the things that you can go ahead and delegate for someone else to go ahead and get done and worry about? From there, now we can get 2/3 off of your plate. And let's look at the ones that are most important. Now, perhaps if we're looking at business and you have a lot of decisions to make, but your time is really weighed down by the amount of decisions you have to make in your personal life. Look, the reality between the average person and especially the wealthy person is that they recognize how valuable their decisions are and can be, and especially what that can then produce for themselves, for their business, for their families, or at least for their individual selves. So hire someone or just figure out a way, an automation, depending on whatever the thing that you need done, to have something else or someone else make that decision for you. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, the biggest problem that I will notice in a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, or just in people between relationships that feel super weighed down, is that they don't ask for help. They have this big ego, maybe you do, but people will have this ego, and I know I've had it too, where it's like you don't want to ask for help. It's part of that societal bullshit narrative of self-made. But the thing is that it takes a team to make the biggest things happen. The biggest things don't happen with one person. Look, I don't care what you say. Mark Zuckerberg crushed it with Facebook as it was coming up, but he didn't do that legitimately all 100% by himself. Like, as everything is now where it is, like, there have been people along this process. Same thing with literally every single other. I mean, there's just look at all of them. There's been some other partner, some other collaboration, some other person in the process to a point, or within the team, in the company, right? Because there's a lot of decisions to make. And so then that brain power, if we can have everyone streamlined in very specifically what they should be making decisions about, collectively doing that, that's scale and that's impact at a tremendous factor, at a tremendous level. But what if I told you that while the average workday is about 8 hours, the average person's only productive for 3 of them? So if even that be slightly the case, there's so many decisions that we have going on in our lives. What can we do to simplify the decisions? What can you do to simplify your decisions so you don't feel so fatigued? And then offload, delegate everything that you can, have the honest conversations with those you can, ask for the help where and when you can, as often as you can, because there's no shame in asking for help. This isn't school. You can cheat. There's no cheating. It's just collaboration. It's getting help. Take advantage. Because society is very willing to help. Because ideally, if you live in a communistic country, you're willing to help. If you live in a capitalistic country, you're probably willing to help. Hopefully. But the point is decisions and the fatigue that you may feel. Get the help so that you can focus on the things that will create the biggest results, and so that you feel the least amount of fatigue. And then from there, the most amount of energy. And I wonder what you'll continue to create and build for yourself when you have more energy in your life. So we hope that this episode was of use to you, especially in the way that you perceive your willpower and your decision making, and especially the way you combat decision fatigue. If you found this valuable, of course, make sure to share any of your takeaways down in the description, in the comments underneath the description. And then from there, hit the subscription button, the bell for notifications. You can, of course, share on your socials. Find us on our socials at The Gen Ed Show, all of them linked below. And we will go ahead and see you on the next episode.